All right, you guys, thanks for stopping in for our live coverage here in the MyRadar studios. I'm Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson. We wanted to do a stream today to kind of encapsulate this weekend, which was incredibly busy. There were two major weather stories we covered. Of course, the landfall of Tropical Storm Henri, but also the catastrophic flooding that happened in Middle Tennessee on Saturday, with the rescue efforts still in earnest there, trying to search for dozens of people that are still missing. So it's been an incredibly busy couple of days. And we wanted to join our tropical and our weather specialist, Matthew Cappucci, who was with us all weekend doing an incredible job kind of unpacking all of what Henri had to offer the Northeast. So Matthew is joining us live from Elizabeth, New Jersey, I believe, and he has had a long weekend. I'm sure looking forward to some time off. Let's talk to Matthew first about what's been going on there, and we'll get you updated on everything else. So Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us some of your thoughts about this weekend and how things went.
Well, I think one thing that was kind of tricky with this storm was the communication element of the fact that we got tons of rainfall outside the cone of concern, when it was really wind and flooding that were issues further.
Okay, and I apologize, Matthew. I have a huge delay in my ear, so I'm trying to battle that at the moment. So one of the things I know that you and I talked about when we were talking about the coverage was how we were going to tackle this and where you were going to go. You winded up going to, I believe, your entry point of the storm was Rhode Island. Can you talk to me a little bit about that, how you determined where you're going to go the morning of? I know you were up early, 3 a.m., I think, looking at some of the models and some of the radar. What are some of the key components that you look at when you're trying to figure out an intercept of a hurricane or a storm? Oh, I apologize. It looks like we've lost Matthew. So you know what we'll do? I think he's trying to reestablish a connection with him. So we'll try and get Matthew back live here in just a second. So we're going to take a look at the app at the moment while we try and reestablish with Matthew Cappucci. And up in that area, by the way, of the country, it's pretty interesting to note, you guys, because there's been a lot of power outages in this area. So let's take a look at some of that. You know, some of this might be some bad cell service up there. He's just outside New York City. So we'll take a look at some of the areas in Connecticut. New London, by the way, from earlier today, just about 1,700 people still without power there. But as you go a little further towards the west, we definitely can see an uptick in the power outages in Rhode Island. So Washington County, one of the hardest hit areas, still dealing with about 32,000 power outages. At one point, there was a couple 100,000 people without power over the weekend. Things are definitely on the improvement side of things. We've got about 7,000 people in Kent County without power. And then up into Windham County, we have about, well, the data is still low, about 4,000 people without power. So you can still see there's still some moderate rain here, and even back towards Danbury, Connecticut, we've got some power outages. We'll look at that real quick, about 2,000 people there. But as I take this, broaden the scope out here, you can still see that we have some moderate rain here that's still going to be able to produce a decent amount of rain through this afternoon. So we're going to still be talking about the leftovers of Henri through this afternoon and tomorrow. And by the way, the National Hurricane Center issued their last advisory on Henri this morning at 11 o'clock. So the rest of our products will be products that are coming out of the National Weather Service offices. And Matt, if you can take WSI full, we'll go over to that there for a second. We can take a look at some of those stronger bands. But some of the flood watches, you can also see those. We still have a flash flood watch up for that brighter green, and then there's a flash flood warning, I should say, and then a flash flood watch is for those little less bright green that you see there, that more forest color. So there's still that risk, and there's still some heavy rains that are moving through parts of Connecticut. Let's take a look at this. We'll do a rain rate here. I think some of these are still putting down about an inch an hour, some heavy duty storms. And this one's actually putting down just about a third of an inch of rain. So not as intense as yesterday when we were doing our live streams yesterday. Some of those storm cells had about an inch and 3/4 of rain an hour. This one here about 6/10. So remember, these storms, as the feeder bands kind of, or what would be loosely called a feeder band, kind of rotate over this region, it takes an hour or two. So easily there's going to be another inch and a half in in some of these storms, and that's enough to cause the localized flooding. We've seen so much rain here in the last couple of days, and even before, leading up to Henri, we were still dealing with the leftovers of Fred. This region of the country has also had a tremendous amount of rain this summer. There's been several records. New York City broke a record over the weekend with 2 consecutive days of just over 1.3 inches of rain per day. So, the signature this summer will definitely be the floods and the flooding rains that have been left behind with these tropical systems. As I show you the radar loop, you can still see that broad area of circulation, and some of that's been rotating over Long Island this afternoon, and that's going to move up into, again, northern Connecticut, and then we'll get up into New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and eventually this is all going to go up into Maine, and then it'll quickly get skirted out to sea. So by tomorrow this time, I think most of this is going to be out of here, but still have that potential for some of these stronger storms to produce some pretty localized flooding events. As of 11 a.m., by the way, again, the last advisory from the Hurricane Center, Henri's winds were at 30 miles an hour. It was moving east at 6, so that just tells you how much it slowed down. At one point this weekend, it was moving north at about 21. The center is about 45 miles northeast of New York City, so it's kind of been in that same general vicinity over the last couple of days, and that's why the flooding risk has been pretty intense. But one of the other harder hit areas, and once we reestablish with Matthew Cappucci, we're going to talk about New Jersey. Matthew had talked about that early into this on Friday before Henri had made landfall, that one of the signatures was going to be the rain coming out of New Jersey. The state there has been dealing with a tremendous amount of rain. And here is a look at some of those accumulated radar totals. And as you can see, some of the estimates here, 3 to 10 inches. So the larger swath in those blues and those magenta colors is where, if you look at our legend at the top there, is where the totals have been anywhere from that 7 to 10-inch range, and New Jersey has a lot of it. So I'll zoom in here a little bit tighter. We'll take a look at some of these areas, and I'll do a query on these, and we'll take a look at some of those specific totals. East Brunswick, that's one of the higher ones. That's 6.5. Readington, this is coming in at 5.5. Just below Parsippany, that is 6 inches. Parsippany, by the way, the headquarters of Tiffany and Company. I know that well. But anyway, there's 7 6/10 in New York. Again, a tremendous amount of water here. You've probably seen some of the pictures on social media. We have shown those to you guys as well. And just an incredible amount of water here, and even over into some of these other outlying areas south of Yonkers, just about 5 inches of rain. So that's accumulated from this weekend, and there has definitely been some issues with trying to move this water. There's a lot of concrete up here. Obviously, these are large cities, and there's not a lot of places for the rain to go, and unfortunately, that means a lot of flooding. Back over by Montauk, just off, actually over here by Rhode Island, about 3.5 inches of rain. But remember, the data will come in as we get in further in time here. So I expect these numbers in Rhode Island to go up a bit as well. The interesting thing to note about some of the rain that we got in this area, especially we were really concerned about the Cape when we saw the shift back towards the east. Is that the rain, for the most part, wasn't a huge issue. The surge itself, by the way, I think officially was about 3 feet. At the highest part, we were concerned that, Fire Island, Montauk, and even over through parts of some of the bays there in Block Bay in Rhode Island, that we were going to see that surge somewhere, in the 3 to 5 foot range. But when all was said and done, because Henri continued to get weaker as it moved up towards the southern New England states, the actual surge itself was about 3 feet. So although that is certainly a tremendous amount of water, it certainly was manageable, and thankfully I think most people had evacuated and gotten out of harm's way. But one of the interesting things to note was, again, that because so much of that rain was on the left side, on the west side, we didn't see a bunch of huge numbers out of this region, out of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. We still had some, I'm backing this up because I just wanted to show you guys what we're going to be doing with rain. as we head through the next couple of days. So you can see that there's still going to be a fair amount here through parts of Connecticut and into Massachusetts as we head through this afternoon and into tonight. And then moving up into New Hampshire, and then it looks like most of this is going to be out of the region by early tomorrow morning. There might be some residual rain that's coming in on the backside of that as the leftovers on pushes east. But I think for the most part, we're going to be done with it. So thankfully, folks here are going to get a chance to dry out. So let me put this back up here, and Matt Highland, if you can give me an update, because that's it for my graphics. We can either try and take the stream down and rejoin Matthew Cappucci when we get it figured out, or I can also, real quick, I'll talk about the flooding that's been ongoing in Tennessee. Matt, if you can maybe take that video, we'll talk about the flooding real quick, and we'll see if we can get an update about Matthew Cappucci. I know that, again, the cell service probably is pretty spotty up there. The power outages are still ongoing, but let's talk about the flooding in Middle Tennessee, because there was so much build up to this landfall of Henri. If it had come in as a hurricane, that region had not seen a hurricane since 1991 with Hurricane Bob. Of course, it came in as a tropical storm, but Saturday, as you may or may not know, there was about 17 inches of rain that fell in Waverly, Tennessee, in several counties there, Dickinson County, one of them, and that created a floodgate, if you will, of a tremendous wall of water that came from the rivers that just overflowed and pretty much buried the town of Waverly. So you're looking at some of the video from the aftermath of that flash flooding event, and the death toll is getting close to 20 now, and there are dozens of people that are still missing, including many children. If you followed this at all on social media, some of the stories that are coming out of this area of Tennessee are just heartbreaking. We're hearing about children being swept away in their homes. I read one story of, just babies that were taken literally out of their father's arms. Just incredibly difficult situation for the folks there. And I think the officials there are still grappling to try and get a hold of the scope of that catastrophe. So I believe we've got Matthew Cappucci back and on our system so we can talk to him. Matthew, can you hear me? Yes, awesome. So what I want to do, thank you for hanging with us. I don't know if it's the cell service up there or maybe something on our end, but I know I had started to ask you, what is some of the things that you do when you're trying to intercept a hurricane when you get up that morning? I know you're up very early Saturday around 3. What's your checklist of go-to things that you do to try and figure out where you're going to go to intercept a hurricane?
Relegated mainly west of the eye. So I did have the option of flying up to Boston, then driving south and west. Instead, I chose to kind of curve up the coast and eventually meander farther east. I had been considering Long Island, but it looked like the eye would pass just a little farther east. So I drove up Interstate 95, eventually into Connecticut and Rhode Island to intercept from the west, because that's where we knew there was going to be the best chance of very heavy rainfall. So I always try to put myself right where the best action, where the most significant action will be, to show folks what's going on, prompt them to take advice, and really prompt them to take the necessary precautions they need to, because the more compelling visuals we can show to people, the more likely they are to take action. And we see this with tornado warnings, we see this with hurricane events, but anytime there's a high-end storm, we want folks to take action. So it's really about getting that good visual to really spur action. And one of the things that we noted too with this storm was in the prior several days, we had seen a bit of a trend for the storm to push farther eastwards. Originally, we thought landfall on Long Island was most likely, somewhere in maybe Suffolk County, a little farther eastwards. But we noticed with the storm, roughly around Thursday into Friday, a flare-up of convection, shower and thunderstorm activity east of the center. That resulted in the storm kind of being tugged a little farther east. The center was a little bit lopsided. The storm wasn't looking overly symmetrical, and as a result was tugged eastwards, and that's why you saw that. We don't have video. Well, I assume folks can hear me. That's bizarre that you don't have my video. But in any case, the storm was being tugged a little farther eastwards, and as a result, it went in between Long Island and Block Island Sound. So I think that was the issue there. It's saying that I have a virtual background. I don't know how to get that off. We apologize for any tech issues, of course. Sometimes we got to roll with the punches here, but fortunately, hopefully you folks can hear me. But I will say the storm was trending farther eastwards than we were thinking it would. That's why I drove into Rhode Island, and I noticed the western eye wall had a little bit more bite than the eastern, which is atypical given that the eastern eye wall is usually where the wind is actually boosted by the storm's forward motion. That wasn't the case this time. We had so much more precipitation on the western side that helped drag down momentum from above, and that's why the worst winds were on the inner eye wall, which is a little bit atypical. One thing that's kind of cool too with this storm right now, it's still spinning. It's a very weak one, has winds of only about 25-30 miles per hour, is really just kind of a hollow shell of its former self. But we are actually seeing tornado warnings south and west of Boston. Not sure if there are any still in effect right now, but there were about 30 minutes ago, because they're in the front right quadrant of the storm, meaning kind of ahead of the eye on the right side or ahead of the center on the right side. And that's where friction from the ground slows down surface level winds, but the upper level winds are strong enough that they continue moving on unimpeded. And that creates shear, a change of wind speed and direction with height. And that's been brewing a couple little storms that are spinning in south central Massachusetts, pretty much south of Interstate 90, along the Mass Pike and into perhaps looks like Hampton, Hampshire counties over towards Norfolk counties. And those are areas to watch, especially northern Rhode Island too, and north of Woonsocket. But it's kind of cool to see that. And I think one thing too that's playing a role, increased sunshine today. The storm is really hollow. There's not much precipitation left. Obviously, we have that big arcing band in western New England right now. But ahead of it, there's some sun poking out. And that's the reason why, with that sunshine, it's heating the ground enough that you can get these parcels of air to go upwards, spark new downpours, and they are rotating. So even folks in central eastern Massachusetts and northern Connecticut and Rhode Island will have to watch out for an isolated tornado today as those remnants move through and as that wind shear, change of wind speed direction with height, spins a couple storms. I cannot hear anything in studio.
I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are going to be watching today, Matthew. That's such a great point. One of the other things that, we talked about before we had our issues with the audio, and I'm not sure if you were able to hear, but I was talking about how you had, so accurately called that New Jersey was going to, oh, he can't hear me now. So
I can hear you.
We'll see if we can reconnect you here. Let me know, Matthew, if you can hear me. Now I can hear myself, so maybe you can hear us. I don't know. And I apologize, you guys. We're trying to establish a couple of connections here, and there's always issues, especially when people are in where there is weather going on, and cell service is probably compromised. A lot of people are trying to get a hold of family up there, and there's also there's a lot of people that are probably trying to get messages out to family. So we are trying to, of course, talk to Matthew. Matthew, can you hear me?
I can. I think we're good.
Okay, I don't think he can hear me. So I think what we're going to do, guys, is, if we can reestablish with Matthew maybe later today, we'll try and, work out some of these kinks. And thanks for hanging with us here these first, couple of minutes here on Monday to try and unpack some of this that Henri did. Thankfully, again, the system itself a little less intense than it was the original forecast was, and that's still. Oh, I think he hears me now. Matthew,
yes,
can you hear me?
Yes, we are good to go. Yep.
Goodness. I heard him say he can hear me. I don't know. There's a terrible delay. So,
we're good.
Matthew, yes?
Yes. Ask me questions. We're good to go.
No, I don't think he can. Okay, so we're going to take the stream down for now, you guys. What we'll try and do is maybe interview Matthew, where we don't have to worry about live stuff, and we'll put him in our live show tomorrow. As you are well aware. Oh, wait, one more time. Matthew, do you hear me? Okay, Matthew, if you can, okay, so awesome. Okay, okay, very good. So I think what we'll do real quick, let's talk about, I was talking about the Tennessee flooding while we were working through some of this, Matthew. We'll just end on that. And I think what, we'll try and do is maybe try and get you in an interview when you get back to DC, and maybe we can run some of that tape tomorrow after we work through some of these issues. But I did want to get your thoughts on the flooding in Tennessee, because we were talking about that. And I know there was so much attention that was focused on Henri on Saturday that unfortunately I think a lot of the headlines out of this weekend and the incredible loss in Tennessee was overlooked. So what are some of your thoughts when you look at this catastrophic flooding event that happened in Waverly, Tennessee on Saturday?
I think one of the tricky things is that so often when we talk about severe weather, high impact storms, we think of tornadoes and windstorms or hail and stuff like that. And realistically, flooding, especially freshwater flooding, causes more fatalities every single year. And we're seeing that there. The Cooksville, Nashville tornado killed 26 a couple years ago. This time we're already up to 22 fatalities with about 50 people missing. And it's just a heart-wrenching scene that's being reported from the ground there, with infrastructure demolished, with buildings that look like it's been a war zone, like a tornado came through. But water has power that is oftentimes underestimated. And one of the interesting things with this, you had training thunderstorms for 4, 5, 6 hours or more that were unleashing 2 to 3 inch per hour rainfall rates. When you have a tropical air mass in place, like what was dragged north by Henri, and you have stalling thunderstorms, that's a recipe for absolute disaster. And we're fortunate this wasn't over the Nashville metro area. Had it been, we would be talking probably dozens more fatalities. And so that's the only silver lining in all of this. But I think it's worth mentioning, too, that in today's day and age, we're going to be seeing events like this a little bit more frequently. For every degree Fahrenheit the air temperature warms, it can hold about 4% more water. And as we've seen, about 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees of climate change so far, the air is a lot juicier, holds a lot more moisture, and that can come down in higher end events like this. That's something we're actually seeing with hurricanes too. But back to the storms in Tennessee, it was amazing to see how relentless these downpours were. And we'll have to go back and see if there's perhaps a boundary in the atmosphere or something like that really helped to focus all this rainfall. But just an absolutely tragic situation. And it underscores the fact that people need to have a flood plan. And this is something that's true well outside of traditional severe weather alley, even in New York, New Jersey, like we saw the other day, people were getting flooding. And I think so many people have plans. They know what to do if a tornado warning is issued. They know where to evacuate if a hurricane warning is issued. A lot of people haven't thought through their plan of action if a flash flood warning is issued. And oftentimes, these flash flood warnings don't always pan out. It's tough to figure out exactly where the water will go. But for these high-end events, you're seeing scenes right there of utter calamity with vehicles tossed and carried. The power of water is unbelievable. People need to know what to do, where to get to high ground quickly, and really just have a plan. And even in situations like this, you see these homes were obviously submerged. I think it's really tricky for folks to be able to take action quickly, because you can hide from a tornado. You can't really hide from water unless there are pre-designated higher ground locations for them to go to. Flooding is just one of those things that is tough to escape, and it's absolutely heart-wrenching to see what occurred there. But look at that. The scenes of power are like something you'd see from an EF3 tornado, and that shows you water is something that is to be taken seriously. It is a force to be reckoned with. Only takes about 6 inches to sweep you off your feet, a foot to carry your vehicle downstream, and they likely had many feet of water that were rushing downstream and just causing damage unlike anything I can remember from a flood event. I've seen a lot of these events. I can't remember one like this. It's absolutely heart-wrenching, and broke the Tennessee 24-hour rainfall record.
Yep.
It's unbelievable. How are you doing, folks? Leslie, can you hear me? It looks like we may be having some audio issues right now, so I'll continue kind of discussing what's going on.
It really is amazing because, I mentioned on Twitter last night that some of the video I retweeted some, and this gentleman has an incredible story. This gentleman that I got his video from, he's a radio announcer in Huntsville, Alabama, and it was amazing to hear his story when he went over there to cover it yesterday. So at any rate, it's just an incredible story that will be a major story we're going to be trying to cover here this week. So again, I want to thank Matthew Cappucci for joining us today. Again, you guys, I see in our chat and YouTube, you guys can hear him, and I couldn't hear him, and so it's one of the perils of doing stuff live. So thank you, Sandy, for telling me that you can hear us. Sandy, of course, one of our longtime listeners, and I appreciate her so much. And thank you, Matthew, for sticking with us while we try and work out some of these kinks. It's a Monday. This would not be a Monday without some type of hiccup. So again, we want to thank you guys for joining us as well. We'll continue to cover that flooding story out of Tennessee, trying to get the story on the ground from the search and recovery efforts, and hand that off to you guys this week as well. So again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you back here real soon. Stay safe, everybody.
you.